Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good morning and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Garrett Bergquist in for Phil Sanchez. The Indiana Senate has called off the redistricting session, at least for now. Senate President Pro Tempore Rod Bray says Senate Republicans do not have the votes to redraw our congressional maps and will not meet next month as planned. The Trump administration has pushed Indiana lawmakers for 3 months to redraw the maps. But on Friday afternoon, Bray said, over the last several months, Senate Republicans have given very serious and thoughtful consideration to the concept of redrawing our state's congressional maps. Today, I'm announcing there are not enough votes to move that idea forward, and the Senate will not reconvene in December.
I think we've heard again and again from Hoosiers across the state that this is not the direction they wanted to go, so I'm relieved, and I'm really thankful that we can return to issues that really are impacting Hoosiers most.
Governor Mike Braun had called a special session to redraw the maps. State lawmakers plan to meet during the first 2 weeks of December, effectively starting the 2026 short session early. Time was short. Candidate filing runs from January 7th to February 6th. Braun says on X, I called for our legislators to convene to ensure Hoosiers' voices in Washington, D.C. are not diluted by the Democrats' gerrymandering. Our state senators need to do the right thing and show up to vote for fair maps. Yoder says Democrats will remain vigilant, but she thinks it's not likely Bray will reverse Friday's decision or bring it up when lawmakers convene in January.
I think we have turned a page for Indiana history. Maybe we've made history, I don't know, but we've certainly turned a page, and we are looking ahead to this 2026 session to get down to the business of what Hoosiers want us to do, and that is to address affordability and to address the economy.
State lawmakers will still meet on Tuesday for Organization Day. That's the ceremonial start of session. After that, the Senate plans to reconvene on January 5th. I asked multiple Republican members of both the House and Senate for a response to Bray's announcement. All of them told me they were unavailable or else they did not respond to my request for comment. Indiana congressmen are reacting to the decision. Democrat Andre Carson says prayer, people, and partnerships power change. Hoosiers do things differently. We're about collaboration, not division. We're about independent thinking, not taking orders from Washington. Carson is one of 2 Democrats who likely would have been targeted. Republican Congressman Marlin Stutzman says on X, this is simply unacceptable. Democrats are gaining ground in their states before our eyes, and Indiana state senators are rolling over and letting the left overtake us. What will it take for Republicans to want to win? And for more on this, let's bring in 2 members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Whitley Yates and Democrat Lindsey Haake. Thank you again for coming in this morning. Whitley, given the timetable that I just described, does this mean that the push for mid-cycle redistricting is dead in Indiana?
Absolutely not. I think what we're seeing, though, is that the Senate is saying that they don't necessarily have the votes to continue this and that they're not going to put this to an official vote. However, if you saw the announcement from Governor Braun, he said that constituents deserve to know where each person sits, and so they should vote to make it aware to their constituents where they are on the redistricting battle. And I think what we're going to see is, when put to the test, the Republicans that have to come by and say, I'm not for redistricting, may not be for putting their name next to a no vote, and the repercussions of what that will do in an election cycle.
Lindsey, what does this say about where Hoosiers are on the redistricting issue?
Yeah, I think you've got a mix of 2 things. I think it's a great point that you brought up. The filing is happening on January 7th. That does not give the administration a lot of time over in the Department of, over in the election division of the Secretary of State's office, a lot of time to get working on this. Even if they were to pass maps, no matter what the maps looked like, that would not give them a lot of time administratively to actually implement them properly. Now, on the other side of things, you've got the constituent issues where you had just an absolute outcry from Hoosiers on this. Did not want it. The polling showed it didn't. No one wanted it. It was really, really going to be tough for someone to defend a yes vote on redistricting. So DC Beltway folks, I mean, they overplayed their hand on this one.
Lindsey, should Indiana worry about retribution from the Trump administration in the form of, say, withheld funding?
Possibly. I know the president has already threatened that with some senators, and that conversation is unfortunate because those are mostly, for the most part, those are congressionally dictated funding streams that are already on the books and being discussed by congressional leaders, our literal fiscal leaders. The president is simply another conversation. Not saying that that's not a big one. Obviously, the president's comments carry a lot of weight, but this, from my standpoint, is just simply an overplaying of the hand again.
Whitley, I'll let you respond to that as well, but also, what does this say about the state of Governor Mike Braun's political capital right now?
I mean, I think Braun's political capital is very high when you look at the wins that he's had when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to the policies, reorganizing the IEDC. We're seeing time and time again that he's working for Hoosiers, but there is something about democracy that is playing out here that is a little bit different. And in the Republican Party, we do believe that you are able to disagree with decorum. And so what you're seeing is a disagreement on how to move forward on a special session that he called. But in the grand scheme, after watching California in their redistricting and watching other Democratic states in how they're attempting to redistrict, I do think it's incumbent upon Indiana to really look at what we have here and how it's going to play out nationally. Because whether or not the funding is withheld federally, we still may not have a say if blue states are redistricting and our voice gets diluted in Congress.
Right. Whitley and Lindsey, thank you both. We're going to check back in with you later in the program. Coming up, America's longest government shutdown. Congressman, what he's looking for in the upcoming fight over health care subsidies. Welcome back. The federal government is still getting back up to speed after the longest shutdown in U.S. history finally ended. Indiana's delegation voted along party lines to reopen the government. Our Derek Dennis talked to Republican Congressman Marlin Stutzman moments after the vote.
Thank you for joining us. You're just off the floor. The House has voted to end this historic shutdown. First of all, how did you vote?
Yeah, great to be with you. I voted yes. It's a good day for the American people that the government is open back up. No more of the flight delays and because of air traffic controllers not being paid. SNAP benefits are going to be funded for those who are counting on food stamps for their young ones and for their families. So it's a good day. And actually, 6 Democrats voted yes as well with the Republicans. So I just think that shows that, again, this was really an unnecessary shutdown that did not need to happen.
But the other side of that is there were a very large number, the majority of Democrats did not vote for this. And they're saying that the guarantees for the health care subsidies just aren't in this agreement.
Well, I think one of the things that we can now do is have a discussion about those subsidies for the insurance companies. That's the thing. Democrats want to subsidize insurance companies to reduce the premiums. I think it's more important that we send any subsidy to the American people and let the American people decide what they want to do with those funds, rather than sending them to the insurance companies who have had record profits ever since Obamacare was passed.
But doesn't this bill to reopen the government simply just kick this down the road? I mean, could we wind up very well back here in January?
Well, it does to an extent, but there was the military construction pieces were funded for the next year. We also had Ag Bill, veterans was taken care of. We still have to do the NDAA, the defense authorization, but this definitely is getting us to the point where we can finish up the budget, and it's good that it's past Christmas. It goes all the way to January 30th, which is a much better date than putting it right before Christmas, and then anybody using Christmas as leverage to pass a bill that has too much spending and is unnecessary. So at the end of the day, again, this did not have to happen. Democrats and Senator Schumer decided that they were going to shut the government down. And as they even said, Dick Durbin from Illinois said that this is, just politics that was being played by some in the Democrat Party.
How do you square the fact that Indiana's lawmakers there in Washington are divided over this issue? It's more than Republicans versus Democrats, right?
Well, one of the things that we have to look at, Derek, is the context of our budget situation. We have $37 trillion of debt, and every year, $1 trillion goes towards just the interest on that debt. And so this is a bipartisan problem that has to be addressed, where we, grow the economy so that way the revenue is coming into the government. And but also we've got to control spending. And one of the places that's the fastest growing in expenditures is healthcare. And so I don't think that the American people should have to suffer because of the circumstances. And that's why I voted yes on the bill today. But at the same time, we have got to address our health care system and the health insurance system because there's too many hands in the cookie jar. And that we shouldn't make the American people pay more for health care than what they already do. We could do this much more affordably.
Overwhelmingly in talking to Hoosiers, they don't like the idea that it seems that lawmakers are using a government shutdown to get things done.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. In fact, I think that in the Senate, because of the rules of the Senate, they should eliminate the filibuster rule on budget bills. That way we don't have shutdowns. The party that is in control in either the House or the Senate should be able to pass the bill without it being filibustered. And so I think that if going forward, all budget bills should be exempt from filibusters from either side, and let the majority party pass the bill. And if the American people don't like it, then they will change the control of the whichever chamber the next election. And so this filibuster rule has really been the problem, and that's what caused the shutdown on the Senate side.
All right, that's all the time we have, Congressman. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Great.
Democratic Congressman Andre Carson says he's a hard no on the deal. He posted on X, "It's simple. No health care protections, no vote from me. Republican spending bill will cause millions to face skyrocketing health care costs, and Americans just can't afford it." Coming up, Indiana's best political team dissects the after effects of the shutdown and the implications for any future shutdowns. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. With us once again, Democrat Lindsey Haake, Republican Whitley Yates. Let's turn to the federal government shutdown that just ended. It was a record 43 days. Whitley, the deal that reopened the government funds most of the government through January 30th, other than food assistance and a couple other programs. How likely is it from where we sit right now that we will have another shutdown in January?
Well, it depends. If Democrats want to continue to use the leverage of the American people at their own expense, then we could have yet another shutdown. I think it was really disappointing to see that the least, the last, and the lost of those among us that really relied on the types of services like supplemental nutrition assistance were the ones most hurt by our government not being able to come together and pass a continuing resolution. The fact that we only have until January 30th does signal that we could be in another potential government shutdown. However, I hope that that's not what happens.
Lindsey, there was talk during the shutdown of passing a law to ensure that federal employees receive pay regardless of whether or not if there is a lapse in appropriations. Both parties had bills. What are the chances that Congress actually does something on that between now and January?
I don't know. I'm hopeful something can happen, only because, a lot of, I work in the aviation sector too, and I have a lot of friends who are controllers, and this was not a great time for them. They were really struggling. And so we're all federal workers. We obviously have a large number of those here in Indiana, and especially here in the central Indianapolis area where you have DFAS. Up in Lawrence, you have a lot. And so obviously the hunger and the issues affect these folks first. Their first paycheck they didn't get was in mid-October, and that was a huge problem. So you had food banks reaching out to federal workers, and obviously Congress hears that issue needs to be addressed. Whether that happens, not so sure. And you have, January 30th as the next deadline, so we will see what happens.
I briefly alluded to the food assistance program. So hunger relief organizations say that this crisis exposed a lot of shortcomings in our nation's food assistance programs.
100%.
And Lindsey, food assistance programs are funded through the end of September. And this is basically all of them. This is SNAP, this is WIC, this is school nutrition, everything. Does that suggest that lawmakers might prioritize preserving food assistance in the event of a future shutdown?
I certainly hope so. That is, you've got more than one layer of government on this, obviously. Those programs, while they are funded federally through September 30, you still have conversations ongoing right now in the Indiana state legislature and the Indiana state administration regarding programs for the summer Sunbucks program, which has not yet been decided for 2026. And so that needs to also be addressed. That's a lot of school kids without any sustenance that's provided from SNAP programming during the summer when they're not in school, and that really needs to be addressed as well.
Whitley, what finally broke the logjam here? Was it the sight of long lines at food pantries? Was it the nation's aviation industry beginning to contract, the air traffic controllers, or was it a combination of both?
I honestly think it was a mixture of many things. As Congressman Stutzman coined it, the Schumer starvation, I think, really helped to expose a lot of people. So whether or not you're on supplemental nutrition assistance program or you utilize food stamps, that may not have hit home. But 4 or 5, 6 hour lines at the airport or attempting to fly may have then hit home. Then when they had the bill to fund the military and to continue to pay the military, and that didn't pass, I think that there were multiple things that made a lot of people in Congress and a lot of Americans very concerned about the state of building common ground in Congress. And so I think it was multiple of those items that came together that allowed for some of the Democrats to come over and say, okay, we're going to vote to put money and food back on the table of American people.
Briefly before we move on, how big of a role do you think this is going to play in the midterms? Whitley, we'll start with you.
I mean, I think it's going to play a huge role in the midterms. I think this entire midterm maneuver, the redistricting, the government shutdown, I think all of that is going to be on people's minds as they're contemplating what the future leadership looks like of this country.
I think you had a lot of, look, this past two weeks really determined a lot with the midterms. You have affordability issues that some do not agree are an issue when the entire nation is struggling to pay its bills. And so if you're not talking about affordability and you're focusing then on either blaming Republicans or blaming Democrats on the shutdown, you need to move forward. You need to address how Americans are suffering and how Hoosiers are disproportionately impacted by these issues.
I've got about 2 minutes left. I want to turn to one other issue. This past week, the Family and Social Services Administration cut ties with MDYs. That's one of our longtime Medicaid providers in this state. Lindsey, I'll go to you on this first. How unusual is this?
Yeah, this was a surprise to some. It was a surprise from the timing standpoint for me. It was not a surprise having worked with many who have been complaining about the services they've received. But I will pose this question. If that's the case, if their reasoning, if FSSA's reasoning about MDYs is what it is, then why aren't we cutting the contract with Anthem, who I'm also hearing multiple complaints about? So I would love more explanation, but I'm not ready. I'm not sure I'll hear anything.
Whitley, I've got about a minute left. I'd like your analysis of this as well, and also, is this part of a broader Medicaid strategy from the Braun administration?
I think that this was a data-driven decision. When you looked at the cost of MDYs and when they looked at what the cost of MDYs was versus what Hoosiers were receiving when it came to health care, there was a huge imbalance. And we're only required to have 3, and we had an additional health care provider. And so no one's going to go without any type of health care. They're going to still be able to have health care if they have MDYs. And now it offers an opportunity for us to honestly just have the best health care possible in the state of Indiana. Braun has been very bullish on making sure that we have great health care. He did it in the private sector with this company, and now he's doing it for Americans here in Indiana.
And I should point out the FSSA has said that anybody who is getting Medicaid services through MDYs will be automatically shifted over to one of the other providers. Lindsey and Whitley, thank you both for coming in this morning, and we will be right back.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. And be sure to check out the All Indiana Politics podcast. You can find it online at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.